The information provided on Dr. Tom Roselle Live by Dr. Tom Roselle, D.C., interview guests, show co-hosts, or substitute hosts is not intended or implied to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. It is for general information purposes only. Information from this broadcast should not replace the appropriate consultation and examination process by a licensed physician. Always consult your own physician prior to changing any current medical directive or prescription.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Asia's Health Livestream with yours truly, Dr. Tom. And we've got a program that we're going to get into today that's kind of, you want to talk about a pandemic? This is a pandemic. What I'm talking about is low back pain and the very different causes of it. You know, there are so many people that are suffering. And it's the number one reason for loss of work, loss of capacity, inability to do. And we want to get into that, really explain it to you. And on the 16th of July, Dr. Harlan Browning, the professor, if you will, and I will go back and forth and talk about this malady, if you will, but more importantly, what you can do not only to fix it, but to prevent it and show you some things that you may not have thought about. So we want to invite you, and you know how to make that happen. We want you to register for the class. Go to drtomroselle.com or rosellecare.com and register. And the only thing that we ever ask you, because these are a gift to the community, a gift to you, is to make sure that if you can't make it, just let us know. But let's get into some important pieces of this puzzle and talk about what really is going on with low back pain, because it's really incredible the amount, the numbers of people that are going on. Let's go back a few years, because the statistics, they kind of grind through and then they challenge them a little bit and so forth. But we go back about 4 or 5 years. We'll go back to the end of 2020. They say that about 619 million people on an ongoing basis have low back pain continually. And, you know, it increases exponentially every year. And they're saying that by the time that 2050 comes around, okay, at that point, hopefully I'm going to still be here talking to you, but in case I'm not, I just want you to know the information, that about 843 million cases of low back pain will continue to be there. Why is that? Why are we having so many problems? Well, that's what we want to explore over a period of time. And that's what we're going to explore on the 16th. So here's the deal. You know, among adults in the good old United States, 39% of us experience back pain at least somewhere in the neighborhood of close to 40% of the time. We're in and out of that pain all the time. And there's another 30% that experience upper limb pain, that's arms and shoulders and so forth, that I want to get your attention is part of that low back pain syndrome. So we're going to kind of pick it apart a little bit. And, you know, as we began to do it on the radio program just before this on WMAL 105.9, and please listen to me on an ongoing basis and tell your friends about the program so we can give them as much information as we possibly can do. You know, there was an article in one of the most prestigious medical journals called Lancet. And, you know, everybody bows to the Lancet. And it was actually the College of Rheumatology that published it in the paper. And it said global, regional, and national burdens of low back pain from 1990 to 2020. Okay, so 1990 to 2020. So how many? That's 30 years, right? Is it attributable risk factors of many different types, right? And again, we told you what the projection is in globally. So they get into it and they start looking at all the things. They talk about injury patterns, and they talk about being too heavy. They talk about sedentary lifestyles and so forth. Some of the things that they're not talking about is the ongoing, if you will, the supportive mechanism in the medical profession. This is me talking, my opinion, of what takes place. So what happens? You go to the doc, and I have low back pain, doc. You know, it hurts, and it may go into your buttocks, and it may go down your legs and form a little bit of a sciatica or a little bit of femoral pain. That means down the front of your leg. And so what do? They give you a drug. They give you an naproxen, or they'll give you to just take Tylenol on an ongoing basis. The problem is that it continues to perpetuate the problem, the underlying situation. Okay, so if you take, NSAID, if you take Advil, if you take any of the, these non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, they compete with different substrates. They're called sulfate substrates. And what do? They help repair the joints. So if you have pain and you're taking one of these drugs, uh, these different medications, the pain is blocked. The receptors are blocked. It decreases the inflammation, but it competes with these ions. So you get further progression and degeneration until pretty soon that you have spinal stenosis or you have bone on bone. Interesting, right? It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy for the medical establishment, because now they got to give you something else, and something else leads to something else, and then pretty soon you end up with what? Surgery. So we want to kind of unfold that, and we're not going to hit it all this today on this live stream, but we're going to get into what really takes place and how these things come about and how they're set up. So when we're talking about the incidence of low back pain, we know that it's huge. And the statistical patterns that are constant. There was an article that came out of the UK, United Kingdom, right? And they were talking about the prevalence of back pain there. And it's slightly less than here. But what they aren't telling you, and still all these studies aren't telling you why. So in 2021 in the UK, they were saying that about 9 million people are chronically, constantly in back pain. 9 million people. That's about, 61% of these 9 million, about 5.5 million, something in that neighborhood, suffer from severe low back pain. And it's the leading cause of disability in the UK, which is, by the way, it is here as well in the good old US of A. The prevalence of low back pain has increased in the UK from 36.4% up to almost 50%, 49.1 or 2%. That's not okay. Why is that happening? You should ask. And more importantly, what can I do to fix me? So let's think about our world. Let's think about what we do. And remember, over the next few weeks, we're going to get into very specific situations. But, how many of you, wake up and you almost can't get out of bed in the morning? How many of you can't lie flat? How many of you can't, lie on your side because pain screams down your legs? That's telling you that there's a problem. You go to the doc, and what do? First thing they're going to do is they're going to put you on medications. When the medications don't work, they're going to send you physical therapeutics. Physical therapy stretches muscles and tries to get rid of the strain pattern within the system. Occasionally it'll work, but what doesn't work is the fact that they're not fixing the underlying problem that may have caused it. So in this particular situation, in low back pain, the number one leading cause of disability, not only in this country, but elsewhere as well, you have to look at what triggers it, and truly injury patterns, biochemical, and emotional stress. And we know that there's, emotional low back pain. And we'll get into that over the next few weeks, and we'll tell you exactly what that is. But it's a global burden. It really knocks people out. Think about, right now we're in the midst of worrying about what's going on overseas and so forth. And, guys getting killed and so forth. And that is egregious to me. But at the end of the day, how many of them also are suffering from back pain, and that they can't do their job the way they're supposed to? Well, now we're talking about, obviously, guys in this country. And so when you look at that and you put these other pieces, but low back pain is the leading cause of disability and loss of work. With our society getting older, and by the way it is, and changes in lifestyle and work habits, the incidence of low back pain is expected, as I said earlier in finger pointed, to rise significantly over a period of time. And we already know that it's, the epidemiological studies, as they like to call them, basically, what's the triggering mechanisms and what happens. And they did it over a period of, I said earlier, about 30 years. There's a reason why we're seeing this incidence increase. And it seems to be more egregious as time goes on. So, what would somebody think about when it comes to low back pain? You're sitting there, maybe right now in your car, you're sitting at home listening to this, you're walking around, and some of you say, as long as I'm walking around, I don't feel too bad. As long as, I'm doing whatever it is, I don't feel too bad. And then if I start feeling something, if I take a little bit of this or I take a little bit of that, it goes away for a period of time and I'm not as in much pain. I don't know about you, but that's not the way I want to live. And we need to find out what the deal is. Approximately 60 to 80% of the people with low will experience low back pain, according to certain studies. The actual number is actually over 80%. Now, it can be transitional, it comes and it goes. It can be something that's chronic and low level, or it can be something that's acute and exacerbating and gets progressively more debilitating over a period of years. That what they're talking about in the United States, up to 30% of people that have low back pain, lifetime prevalence, it can be as high as 80%. But in that area, low back pain becomes a major contributor to what they call years lived with disability. Isn't that a cool phrase? Years lived with disability. It's like, do we have to deal with this, or do we have to just figure out a way to get our lives so we can live them properly? But worldwide, we have about 20% of the world population, a little bit more than that, almost up to 1.7 billion people throughout the world that suffer with low back pain. And when you look at they call it a global burden, if you will, and that's kind of an interesting term. So you can look it up and go, it's GBD, right? Global burden disability. And they look at conditions like rheumatoid arthritis and osteoarthritis and low back pain and gout and so forth. And by the way, every one of those things are individual pieces of the puzzle that can lead to or cause or perpetuate or make worse low back pain. Now, if that's the case, I think I want to find out what to do about it. What are the risk factors? What's really causing the situation to continue to get worse and worse and worse over time. So they set up these models and so forth. And what they don't do, in my opinion, is look at how the body really works as a hand in glove situation. So remember structural, chemical, emotional, right? Think about how muscles work. Think about the process of movement. Now, what makes that happen? That's the nervous system. All right. So you have a brain and you have a spinal cord and you have 31 pairs of nerves that come off the spinal cord. Those nerves divide, they bifurcate on both sides. One goes to the muscle and the other one goes inside and hooks up to the organ system. So in the low back, when you low back pain, since we're talking about, those nerves come out, they divide, and they go into complexes. Some, distributed one part of the body, some of the other, but they all have an internal distribution to the organ systems. They can go to the large intestine, they can go to the bladder, they can go to the organs of reproduction, they can go to the rectal area and so forth, depends on the segment. And that usually starts just above the waistline and goes down into the sacrum. Now, when you have that type of really true distribution and somebody comes up with, I have urinary incontinence, or I have urinary frequency, or I am constipated, or the reverse, or I have irritable bowel, or all those types of things, or I can't get an erection, or my menstrual cycles are horrible. And all of a sudden you realize with that you've got this ache in your low back, and you move around a little bit, feels a little bit better, but it's there all the time. That tells you that there's a connection between those systems. So could it be possible that internal dysfunction could be causing the back pain, or could the back pain, because of something else that you did, be causing that internal dysfunction? And on the 16th, we're going to go over that. I'm going to talk to you about that. I'm going to show you what takes place, because you're never going to get rid of the low back pain unless you understand why it's taking place, why the problem continues to exist. So we have to look at, male, female models, the 2X and XY. That's the way I look at the world. And we have to decide what is going on. Is it a hormonal problem? Is it an injury problem? Is it an overweight problem? Is it I have no muscle tone whatsoever? Is it the shoes that I'm wearing? And then the other piece that you're going to hear Dr. Browning talk about quite a bit is that everything starts from the foot up, does from the head down too. So if your feet are not working the way they're supposed to, or you're wearing shoes that are not supportive of you, it's like, the foot bone is connected to the ankle bone, connected to the knee bone, connected to the hip bone, connected to the backbone. That's really truly how it works. If that foundational principle is not working the way it's supposed to, and it's not as easy as putting just a orthotic in your shoe, and things change dramatically, although sometimes it's necessary to help support certain structures. But if the muscles to the feet aren't holding the way they're supposed to, if the alignment of the bones, the talus, the calcaneus, the cuboid, and so forth aren't lined up the way they're supposed to be, then you're going to get what? You're going to get back pain. You're going to get all kinds of shifting and so forth. So we look at something called, morbidity and mortality. And why did I put mortality? Do you mean there's people who die because of back pain? Well, it's not the back pain that kills them unless it's due to a tumor formation or so forth, but it also could be due to overdoses of opioids, right? To try to kill the pain. And we know that the opioids are, the pathway, the leading, cause of death in the United States, and next to cancer, next to, heart disease and so forth. It's right up there. So if we go to the doc and he gives us an opioid, which is highly addictive, now we're stuck on it. Do you think it's not going to have an impact on how our blood supply works, how our other hormones and chemistries are working in the body? I'm telling you, it is. And because we know that you can die from an opioid overdose, right? So we're looking at this low back burden on society, and we have to understand that if we don't address it properly, then we're simply putting something on to distract us. And I use the term specific to distract us away from the impairment, the disability, and the pain pattern that we're living in. Okay. So that's not okay. Well, if I go to the gym, and I walk around a little bit and I do something, I feel a little better. Well, great. So that's telling you something, that you have a mechanical imbalance. That's telling you that there's something's not right. It may be that paid for belly that you have around you. It may be those glute muscles that have no tone anymore. It could be the fact that, there's other muscles that are not working the way they're supposed to. And all of a sudden you give them a little tweak, not overly burdened, and it feels better. That tells you, we got something that we have to take a look at. How about some of you that, you decide to go out the night before and, you partied too hardy, if you will, and the next morning you wake up and you hurt all over, but that back is screaming and you're stiff, and it takes you, if you don't touch it again, it takes you 2-3 days to be able to get back to some semblance of normalcy. That's telling you there's a chemical component to this. I don't know about you, but I like to live well. I like to make sure that I have the capacity to do the things I want to do. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to look at how the body works. I want you to pay attention to yourself. I want you to go stand in front of a mirror and take a look at what muscle tone you have or don't have. I want you to take a look at that, paid for overgrowth that you have around your midline. And by the way, that doesn't mean that you're pregnant. It just means you got a big belly, and the weight that it imposes on the pelvic structure, on the low back, your knees, and so forth, and all the way through. That may be part of the component. I want you to take a look at the food that you eat. Is it, my model of, avoid what? Sugar, sodas, coffee, black teas, fast food, fried foods, alcohol, gluten, additives, preservatives, and non-GMO or GMO products. Are all those things in your diet on a regular basis? And if it is, you're causing your body tremendous amount of damage through an inflammatory reaction that causes tissue, including bone and nerves, to be broken down and not work the way they're supposed to. And we're going to get into that very, very specifically. So you have to understand that in many cases that we're the culprit. We're the cause of all this, sometimes unwittingly, because we get locked into societal whatever, expectations. Oh, everybody else is doing it, so I might as well do it. Well, back in the day when I was, first in practice and a young guy, and I was in college and I was playing ball and so forth, you looked around at people and they looked a little differently than they look now. What do I mean by that? They were in a little better shape. They were out grabbing, a little exercise here and there, at least going for a walk. They were walking quickly and going up to class as fast as they could. And even people who were not top shelf athletes were not as bad off as we are today. So we have to look at it across the board. We have to segregate it relative to what other pieces of the puzzle are part of this problem called low back pain. Do women have more back pain or different types of back pain? Do guys have more problems than others? Ladies, for years, I used to kid around and say that, as long as women continue wearing heels of any kind, we would fund the retirement policies for the shoe industry. Why? Because they were giving us business, because they were destroying your low back. You get on those heels, your body moves forward, and you try to extend backwards. You're jamming the spine. You're jamming those nerve roots. So when you see all of a sudden you can't get out of a chair easily, that tells you something. Or by the way, if you get out of the chair and you start walking around and it feels better for a short period of time, but if you walk too far, it gets worse again. That's called a low back pain due to sacroiliac problem. Now, that sacroiliac problem is multidimensional. We're going to show you that as we go through the next couple of weeks. But more importantly, on the 16th, here at the Roselle Center for Healing, 6 p.m. sharp, Dr. Harlan Browning and I will go through the process and we'll show you how to get rid of low back pain and make sure it doesn't come back if you're willing to become a partner in your own journey. Got it? So here's the deal. Go to rosellecare.com or drtomroselle.com. Sign up, make a commitment, be there. I get to meet you, which is more fun than anything else. And we will give you the tools. We'll give you the process. We'll show you what triggers this stuff. And we're going to put it together. We're going to talk about dietary patterns. We're going to talk about lifestyle. We're going to talk about different job situations. We're going to talk about, that overzealous accumulation of stuff that you have on your body that you don't want to have. Or sometimes some of you go the other way. You're like super thin. You're super skinny. And you don't have the protein mass. You don't have the muscles in there to even do anything with. Or you're so stressed out. The burden is over the top. Your fight-flight system is like through the ceiling and then down again, and it crashes. You got nothing to repair with. And you're burning up all the nutritional components to give you a decent recovery process. So join me on the 16th. Join the professor, Dr. Harlan Browning, and we'll get it done for you. I promise. You're going to go away with tools and information that you wouldn't have thought about if you hadn't been there. So we'll have a good time. I promise you. We're going to, I'll do demonstrations like I normally do. I'll show you where muscle weaknesses come from, and we'll put it together. 16th, join us. I'm looking forward to being there with you. And remember, I'm here every week. And maybe going forward, we're going to do it more than once a week, and we'll be sending you little tidbits out. But that's in the back of my brain. I'm playing with that thought process right now. But I'm here simply because of the fact that not only do you deserve the information, but I love you all. I'll see you next time. Take care.